Hey everybody, welcome to the kitchen. Today we're making some stuffed peppers and one of them is going to be screaming. The rest will be for those who aren't quite up for the challenge of something that spicy. So first, let's go over the ingredients. We're going to have 4 hand-picked bell peppers. I'm going to chop up a jalapeno and put it in the one that I want to be screaming. Pizza blend cheese, ground beef, the cheapest you can get, not the lean kind. It doesn't have to be the lean kind, but it can be if you prefer that sort of thing. I don't. 1 onion and a clove of garlic. So I'm going to start by chopping up the ingredients. Meanwhile, I'm preheating the cast iron pan because I do like to preheat the pan. I like it to be nice and hot for when I'm ready to throw the ingredients into it. As I'm chopping up the onions and the peppers, I'm going to have the ground beef cooking because it's going to take a little bit longer to cook than the vegetables that I'm adding to it. I have a little bit of olive oil in here, not a whole lot, just enough to kind of cover the bottom of the pan with a fairly thick layer. Now normally I would chop up the jalapenos and cook them in with the meat as well. But like I said, everyone is not going to have their pepper screaming, so I'm going to actually fry the jalapeno in a different pan. I'm also going to cook the onion in with the meat at this point because I want the flavor of the onion to cook up through that meat, and likewise I want the flavor of the meat to cook into the onion if that's possible. But while this meat is cooking, I'm going to season it. I'm going to season it with some oregano because I use that in everything. I'm going to use a little bit of garlic salt, not too much. I don't like stuff too salty. I'm going to use some garlic powder. And I'm also going to use some Worcestershire sauce. And this is also going to give the meat a good flavor. I'm not going to use too much of this. Just kind of sprinkle it around in there. Just enough to give it a little hint of a flavor. So very simple, the seasonings that we're going with here. I'm also, just to give it a little bit of heat, I'm going to give it some red cayenne pepper. As the meat's cooking here, I'm going to preheat the oven to 350 degrees. Now we got my assistant Alex over here helping us out. What are you doing, Alex?
Peeling some garlic.
Peeling some garlic. Isn't that your favorite job of all time? Not really, but it is a big help. And we're going to use this entire head of garlic here, all these cloves, to put into our stuffed peppers. And I gotta say, it's starting to smell pretty good as it's cooking here. The meat is still fairly raw, but we're gonna cook this meat. Meanwhile, I'm gonna go ahead and prepare the bell peppers. So for the bell peppers, fairly simple. I'm just gonna cut off the top. Okay, I'm gonna cut just enough so that I can basically expose the inside of the pepper, just like a jack-o'-lantern, right? Kind of, when we take the lid off the jack-o'-lantern. You could scrape out all the insides there. Okay, you can do that. Make sure you get the seeds out if you want to. You don't have to. I'm actually going to scrape that stuff and leave it in there because it's going to be a little bit of extra filler. But I'm also going to chop this up, the top of the pepper, and the little pieces that come off of this, I'm going to throw in with the meat, and I'm going to cook them and stuff them inside as well. Okay, so we have the garlic all peeled and split basically each clove in half, approximately. Now we're going to add them in to the meat that's over here cooking on the stove. All right, thank you.
Some sticking in there.
Ah, that happens. All right. So it's looking good, it's smelling good, and before long we'll be stuffing these into the peppers. Now for our bell peppers, I'm going to use a baking sheet lined with nothing because I'm cooking on cast iron. But it is coated in vegetable oil, so there shouldn't be any problems with it sticking. Also, I have the jalapeno frying up separately. Now this is something that you will do in with the meat if you want them all to be hot. But in this case, we only want one of them to be spicy. So first thing I'm going to do to prepare these peppers is I'm just going to drizzle a little bit of olive oil in each pepper. And once I get some in there, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of turn it on its side. And I'm just going to kind of make sure that the olive oil gets distributed on the sides of the pepper. Kind of coats the sides there. We're going to start filling these bell peppers. And I have a pizza blend cheese. I want this to kind of have an Italian flavor to it. And what I'm going to do with the cheese is I'm going to kind of layer it. So I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of cheese into the pepper. Okay, just to kind of coat the bottom of each one just a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to put in a little bit of meat, a little more cheese, a little bit of meat. And I'm going to keep going like that for every one of these peppers until they're basically stuffed with meat and layers of cheese in between. And when I say stuff these peppers, I mean we're really going to stuff them. Like as I put the cheese in here, I'm going to pack it in there as tight as it will go. I don't want to leave any space. I want these things to be packed tight. So I'm going to take a handful of cheese in this one and just stuff it down in there. Make sure it's all spread out, filling every crevice of this pepper. And the one that's going to be screaming, I need to put my jalapenos in. So I'm just going to scrape them all in there. I would recommend mixing them in with the meat, as I said earlier, but that seems a little time consuming right now at this point since I cooked them separate. Now you got to be careful when you're pushing this in because the juices will come up. I didn't drain the meat. I don't like to drain the meat. I think that gets rid of some of the flavor. So I want these juices from the meat cooking inside this pepper as it's baking in the oven. So for the Screamin' one, before I put the cap on here, I'm gonna put some Screamin Santos sauce on here. Now this is a sauce that I like to call fraud. And it's the sauce I made in the last episode. It's some pretty serious stuff. It really is. At first it tastes like it's a bit sweet, but then once you get to eating it, it comes back and kicks you in the throat pretty fast. And you realize, oh, this might have been a mistake. This is not as good as I thought it was going to be. Now that they're all stuffed, as tight as I can get them, I'm going to cap them with some cheese. Okay, and after pushing down on this one, I'm definitely going to wash my hands before I take out my contacts tonight. So after all the peppers are stuffed, I got quite a bit of ground beef left over. Now what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to pour some Hunt's tomato sauce into this pan, and I'm going to use this for my noodles. That way the noodles can have some meat sauce, and if there's anybody that doesn't really want a stuffed pepper, can't imagine anybody not wanting one of those things though, they can just have some spaghetti with meat sauce. Alright, so here's the finished stuffed pepper. You can see that Screamin Santos sauce just pouring out of the top of it. Little one without the Screamin Santos sauce. Cheese all interwoven through there. You excited, kid?